Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneider, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato, and we're finally coming to you after a Giants football win to go to 1-2 here today with a huge victory over the Cleveland Browns, saving the Giants season. Like, that's what this was, Nick. They've saved the season, and they put themselves in a position now where they have meaningful football in Week 4 against the Dallas Cowboys, a team that has just lost after almost mounting a comeback. That was pissing me off. Honestly, this could have been like the best day ever for the Giants if the Eagles had, if the Saints knew how to cover a tight end, like a leak route, like at the end of the game. That was absurd defense right there. Could have been 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 across the board, assuming that the Washington doesn't beat the Bengals, and they might. But either way, the Giants have given themselves hope. They've given themselves an opportunity to compete going into Week 4, and they were exciting for a half of football. Really, really exciting for the first time in a long time. And the defense and offense were both dominant in the first half of the game. That was the most dominant half by the Giants, I would say, Nick, since that Vikings playoff game, when you're considering both sides of the ball. I was going to say and special teams, but obviously you can't consider that as well.
Of course. And it's especially special because it came after that devastating, like, dude, when Eric Gray fumbled and then they hit a touchdown pass over Deontay Banks, who had a pretty rough game, man. He could not guard Amari. I was like, this is typical Giants. We're on the road. We're going to go 0-3. We're on a short week. I was like, damn, we freaking suck, you know? And then they were able to, they really showed a lot of resilience. They did. They came together. Yep. The offense was able to matriculate the football down the field, and the defense was really able to dial up the pressure and get after Deshaun Watson. And I'll say this, man, like Deshaun Watson, there is something completely wrong with that guy. That is not the Deshaun Watson we were watching like 4 years ago.
I don't know what this will be. It's an interesting study. I just wonder, like, how much of it is confidence, how much is psychology, but like he just doesn't look anything like the player. And I think their O-line was also just god awful in this game.
They were decimated too. They lost like 2 or 3 guys in the game as well.
Yes. And that speeds up his clock and everything, but that's not an excuse for some of the off-target throws that Deshaun missed in this game. And I thought their game plan was also not good by Kevin Stefanski to start the game. Like, I think they should have went to that hurry up, no huddle earlier, get the ball out quick. Like all the things the Giants essentially have done with Brian Daboll and Daniel Jones in this offense. Cleveland should be running that kind of offense right now with Deshaun Watson. I don't know what their expectation was for Watson, but he's not the quarterback they thought he was going to be, clearly. And where do you want to start here, either on the offense side of the ball or defense? Because there's both exciting things to talk about when it comes to this game.
I say we start with the defense, man, because last week we rightfully took a little bit of exception to the defensive performance. Their run fits were all over the place, especially in week 1 as well, and they were terrible when it came to missed tackles and bringing guys down when they had opportunities to tackle. I don't think that part was as good in this game. I saw there were a couple plays when the Browns were kind of mounting their comeback where there were missed tackles, and, you know, everyone started, loosening their collar a little bit. And you're like, oh, geez, it's starting to, are they mounting a comeback here? Is this really going to happen to us? And ultimately it did not, but it got a little sweaty there, but it was really just the pressure, man. We saw Brian Burns come alive. Kayvon Thibodeau made some plays. Dexter Lawrence had 2 sacks. And Azeez Ojulari looked very good as that. Like that, if Azeez Ojulari can take that role and own that role, dude, he is a damn good pass rushing specialist. And you could see the bend, you see the explosiveness. He was making plays all over the field. And I just really appreciated what we saw from Shane Bowen. He understood that, hey, this Deshaun Watson, if we could stop the run and make Deshaun Watson beat us, they're not going to beat us. And we could just dial up the pressure on 1st and 10. We dial up the pressure. I think it was over 50% of the plays they blitzed. I think I saw like 54% of the plays they blitzed.
57%.
57. And I love that, dude. And a lot of it was linebacker twists, just taking advantage of this young offensive line that was beat up. So I thought the game plan from Shane Bowen was much better than what we saw last week. And I'm glad it ended up resulting in a win for the New York Giants.
We took some heat, Nick, this week for saying that we weren't fans of Shane Bowen's game plan, but we did admit that, while we didn't like his game plan last week against Washington, considering the matchup versus Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels, we did say that there were plays missed by the Giants defenders as well. It's not like we're just, the game plan ruined the game. But I did have to start by saying here, Nick, this was a specific game plan to a specific quarterback, which is what we were both asking for last week with Jaden Daniels. They blitzed only 25% over the first 2 weeks. They blitzed 57% this week against a quarterback, Deshaun Watson, and an offensive line that Cleveland has whatever's left of that line that cannot simply hold up to the blitz. And how effective was it? Deshaun was 8 of 18 for 92 yards and took 7 sacks when the Giants blitzed in this game. So obviously this was the right game plan from Shane Bowen this week. You can say maybe last week's was or wasn't. That's the argument that people made, and we have made our point. But that's spilled milk at this point. The point is he figured it out. He understood the game he understood the idea of what he needed to do this week. And all those guys got after it, dude. Kayvon looked good in this game, I thought. Azizo, like a good explosiveness out of Kayvon. Burns looked great in this game. Dexter Lawrence had what, 8? I think I saw something like 2 sacks and 8 pressures or something like that. Another dominant performance. Azizo Jalari, you said there were some timely blitz calls as well. It got to the point, Nick, where look, and this is what we were asking for and hoping for all offseason. We said some defenses through the course of NFL history can be so dominant from a trenches standpoint. Now, the first thing is important, what you said. You first have to stop the run for any of this to happen. But so dominant for a trench standpoint that the run stopped and they get to a point where they can blitz and just pin their ears back and negate the secondary. Because you know what didn't become a storyline despite it should have been? All the injuries in the secondary for the Giants. They lost Drew Phillips, their best, basically their best defensive back over the first 2 games of the season, essentially on a per snap basis. He has been out. They had injuries. Wasn't it Adoree Jackson left this game as well with an injury? Out. They were decimated at corner. That should be a normal game. We were like, oh God, it's a classic Giants game. All the corners are out. We blame, what could they have done? They had all these backups, all the communication issues. What can you do? None of it mattered because the Giants didn't provide time for it to matter. Now, Tay Banks against Amari Cooper wasn't his best performance, obviously. No. And they finally found something at the end of the game with Amari Cooper. But outside of Cooper, there was no production from the Browns receivers despite the injuries to the Giants secondary. Kudos to the D-line for that.
It just seems like Deshaun Watson, every time he was under pressure, he just jumps around in the pocket, tries to do like Clemson 2016 Deshaun Watson, and then just looks for Amari Cooper, wherever Amari Cooper is. And Cooper is still like a very good wide receiver. I think we saw that. Like you saw on the touchdown that Cooper had. Tay Banks was trying to remove the inside. He was like off by like 3 yards. He was playing inside, heavy leverage. Like, I'm not going to allow you to beat me inside. And Amari and then he beat 2-step and like just cleanly beat him inside. And that's the second time he got beat on a route similar to that. The other one was Justin Jefferson, but the coverage on the Justin Jefferson touchdown from week 1 was like elite by Tay Banks. That was just like an insane one-handed, I'm going to pin the football to my chest by Double J Justin Jefferson. But back to the Browns game, from the defensive performance, man, this was, night and day from what we saw in the first 2 weeks. And I couldn't ask for anything else. Now, I don't want to be, a sourpuss here, but the Browns offense sucks. Like they are not a good offense, but this is what you do when you play a crappy offense, right? You dominate in the trenches, you lean on your strengths, you get after that passer whose internal clock is completely screwed up, and you harass the hell out of him and you sack him 8 times. The Giants took care of business. Now they're going to have a much more difficult test against a very hungry Dallas and desperate Dallas Cowboys team here in a couple of days.
But I think that's the point that we were trying to make, Nick, what you just said, which is the Washington Commanders offense wasn't very good either, and didn't lead. I mean, at least they didn't look that way in week 1, and I don't think they'll look that way this season. Now, part of the problem was the Giants weren't able to stop the run early against Washington, but we feel like there were ways to kind of do things differently from a schematic standpoint to make that a point and to do it just like they did against the Browns. Now, a fair case can be made that Cliff has designed a pretty good run game. I think he did it with Arizona. He's doing it again versus what's going on. And I don't know, man. Kevin Stefanski's been offensive NFL AP coach of the year twice in the last 4 years, but something has gone awfully wrong with the Browns. Maybe it's just losing Nick Chubb or these injuries on the O-line. I'm not sure. I would lean toward the latter, the injuries on the O-line, Nick, but their run game looked awful in this game. And it really was the spark that allowed the Giants, in my mind, to have such an aggressive game plan and stick with it and really get after Deshaun Watson, 57% blitz rate. And, there's so much wasted talent and just wasted contracts on that Browns roster. I was thinking about this, like Jerry Jeudy, they traded for and then gave this disgusting contract to this offseason. And like, where was he this game? He caught the 2-point conversion, but like outside of that, he couldn't beat like the likes of like whatever the Giants were down to at corner.
I mean, he might have. We got to watch the tape.
He might have, but there's no time.
Yeah, there was no time because Deshaun was either. I also felt like there were times where Deshaun was just holding on to the football way too long and it allowed the Giants to get home. But the blitzing ended up getting in. Is everything okay with the mic, Dan?
No, for some reason you just hold on. Yep, I got you, Dan. Sorry.
You got me? Okay. Yep. No, you're all good. Yeah, there were times where Deshaun was just holding on to the football long and the blitz was able to get home and the Giants were able to win high side. And I think Dex, and we got to substantiate this on the tape, but this is kind of consistent every time we watch the Giants defense. Dexter Lawrence just is penetrating almost every single play and causing a ruckus in the pocket and forcing Deshaun Watson to step up or try to go wide, and going wide against a Shane Bowen defense is problematic when you have Kayvon Thibodeau and you have Brian Burns, because both of those guys scream off the the edge. And we really saw that in this game with Brian Burns coming off the edge, forcing that fumble. And that fumble that he forced, that was huge because the game was still very competitive at that point. The Giants just scored the first Malik Nabers touchdown, and the Browns are driving to score before the end of the half. They're trying to put points on the board. Brian Burns forces a fumble. 5 plays later, Malik Nabers is scoring another touchdown, and the Giants are able to take a 2-possession lead at that point. So that Brian Burns fumble really was a pivotal part of that game. And the Browns really weren't able to really do much for the rest of the game, even though the Giants weren't able to land a knockout punch to like finish them, which made it a little tight towards the end.
And I know some people have disagreed with me on Twitter about this, Nick, based on like some coaching or some luck factor index or whatever, which I'd love to see the methodology before I just, automatically buy into. And I'm not saying I dismiss it. I just would like to see it. But I know I've felt, Nick, watching this team, like they've been on the wrong end of a lot of bounces and a lot of close games. Maybe not close games, but just interesting situations with penalties and things like that. And it felt like that pendulum swung big time in this game, right? Like Jones throws an interception early after the 7-0 lead. The game's going to be over if that roughing the passer isn't called, dude. If Cleveland can score a touchdown there, 14-0, I just know how these things work. Like they're not coming back from the Giants. Instead, the Giants get an automatic first down off the roughing and turn that into a touchdown at that point, which changes the whole game. Later on, the Giants had that weird second half game plan, which we're going to have to get to at some point. At least in my opinion, it was a little weird. I don't even know if it was a game plan issue as much as just they went ineffective on offense, because they did try to design some things and they tried to do some things on offense, but there was the timing of the passing game was just completely off, and the running game got totally shut down in the second half, which I want to get your thoughts on in a second. But point being, when Cleveland took the momentum, Jerome Ford then fumbled that weird exchange. It's like a routine exchange from quarterback to running back. So it's like finally the Giants caught a little bit of a break in this game, I felt like, too.
Yeah, it's kind of reminds me of the 2022 season when the Giants kind of they caught a bunch of breaks in the 2022 season that allowed them to win certain football games, like Jacksonville, for instance. You could argue Carolina, but regardless, that happens in football. Sometimes you get the break, sometimes you don't. But I wanted to ask you about, just because you mentioned how the Giants, they tried some different things in the second half and it just wasn't working. The Giants did kind of try to go for they weren't necessarily conservative like we've seen Brian Daboll be in the past. We have a lead, let's just lean on the run and we're going to run a bunch of times.
Right.
And we're going to dial. They actually tried to dial up that shot to, I think it was Theo Johnson. And I wanted to get your opinion on that, because we've chastised Brian Daboll in the past for being a little bit too conservative. It seemed like he had a little bit more of an aggressive streak on offense when it came to play calling in this game when they had the lead. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I'm with you on that. I think there's a read on Twitter that I've seen that I don't know if I agree with, which is that, this was a Daboll fault in the second half of the offense, and Daboll, bad coaching, conservative. I thought they designed multiple shots. How about the back-to-back slot verts for Malik Nabers? That was in the second half when they called that twice in a row. The first one, Nabers had one of the sweetest releases I've seen since his LSU days, essentially. And I hope the Giants go back to the slot verts, by the way, moving forward. I think within each game, I want to see Malik Nabers' slot percentage, Nick, go up and up and up, because that's a good way not only to design him easy targets in the short game where they've been thriving, Jones and Nabers, but to give him more of these free releases where he can just do what he did. I mean, this dude ate up space on that first vert. He was 3 steps, and I know I've seen enough Malik Nabers tape to tell you that if that ball was thrown right and he catches that safety is not catching him. I know Nabers separates there, and that's a touchdown. And then they went back to it the next play. And you talked about the play they designed for Theo. So I felt like they were aggressive in the second half. I felt like the timing of the passing game kind of collapsed. In addition to that, what you said also played a factor. Like Devin Singletary in the run game got shut down in the second half. There was no movement there. They became very one-dimensional, at least for what the Browns can guess what they were going to do. And then the passing game kind of fell off completely, I felt like, in the second half from a timing standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to see on the tape, but with the slot verts, if you get a middle of the field closed team, which the Browns run a lot of that, a lot of cover 3, a lot of cover 1, they were running a lot of cover 3. You run those slot verts against cover 3 where you have, especially from the Giants love their 2x2 sets. You have those number 2 receivers, those winner receivers just put that safety into conflict. And with Malik Nabers, man, it's like you get them isolated in those situations. I was glad they went back to it, and they had Wandale running a little stick route, it looked like, on the other side, and he was open on both plays, but Daniel had his eyes on, they like the matchup against whoever the hell it was in the slot. I thought the Browns might have missed a little bit of an opportunity early in the game to match Denzel Ward against Malik Nabers more frequently, because Nabers was just absolutely feasting on Martin Emerson and even Greg Newsome to some degree. And Greg Newsome's actually a pretty solid cornerback to my understanding from all the tape I've watched of the Browns. But at this point, man, like the Giants actually have a guy who it's like, oh yeah, he's going up against this top cornerback, but he's still going to get his. And again, we've been saying this for a little bit now, but he keeps proving it every week. That's going to be it's going to be something that I'm very much looking forward to covering for the foreseeable future.
We finally have something fun to cover on the offensive side. Something really fun to cover on the offensive side of the ball. Let's talk about that first half of offense. We can get to the second half, which, by the way, it's funny. I mean, Malik Nabers did so many things I felt like unbelievable in this game to give the Giants a chance to win. I felt like we'll go to the tape, we'll see, but I don't think it's a question when we go to our superlatives who the best player in this game was. It was Malik Nabers by far, I think, on the offensive side of the ball. And Brian Daboll said that his favorite play by Nabers wasn't even him ripping an interception out of the hands of the DB on that go ball, or like high pointing that touchdown, that like crazy. You see just the ability to have that body control to catch that football like that in the end zone. And that ball came in hot. Jones put a nice rip and velocity on that throw. I really thought he threw with good velocity in the red zone today, Daniel Jones, both on that touchdown and on the second Nabers touchdown. Both were nice rips from Jones where I really put the velocity behind it. But despite all that, Daboll loved the play where he takes the interception away at the end when they did that design throwback, which was a risky play call from inside their own end zone and could have literally lost in the game. But that could have been an interception. Like that ball was headed toward an interception. Malik got his hand in there to break it up from being an interception there. And that was Daboll's favorite play. But I'll say this. When I asked you this question about Nabers, I was thinking about this. We did our whole evaluation of him, Nick, and we felt like it was one of the best profiles we've seen coming out from wide receiver in a long time. Dane Brugler actually said he was his number one overall rated prospect in each of the last two classes, every position, quarterback, running, whatever, DN, whatever. Best player that he's evaluated in the last two classes. With all that said, we came to the conclusion that the only thing we need to see is, one, can he beat press man at the NFL level, which he's done a good job of so far in limited opportunities, and two, what is he at the catch point? Because it's not like we didn't think he was good at this. It's just like, is he this special player at the catch point? Because if he is, now he's a special separator. Now he's a special speed. Now he's a special post catch. Now he's got special contact balance, literally everything. But then also is now just like this special player at the catch point. I thought maybe he'd be good at the catch point, Nick. I didn't realize he was going to be doing this, dude. And it was evident in the preseason, evident in training camp. He made 2 catches today that were like some of the best body control and catch point plays of the season by any receiver. The first one that I talked about, the near interception that he rips the ball out of the hands, the grip strength, the ability to have the concentration and the balance after you have your feet hit the ground. And then the first touchdown, dude, where it's a hot ball and he has to catch it over his head like this. These are unreal catch point plays. I'll ask you this question. What's holding him back from being one of the 5 best receivers at the end of the season? Like, and I mean that when I say that. I'm not kidding at this point. Like, looking at that, like, no,
that's not why I'm making the face, Dan.
Oh, why are you making the face?
What's holding him back? There are certain things about our offense that might hold him back from reaching the statistics that other wide receivers will be able to.
Let me be clear. From what I mean, I'll take this a different way. From if Nick Villado evaluates all the receivers at the end of the season, individual of their stats, because me and you don't care about stats. Like Wandell's the best example, dude. Wandell's a really good football player. People were calling him a bust before this year because he doesn't have stats, because that's not his fault. But just your opinion of receivers, like Justin Jefferson for sure, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb. But like, we're getting to the point after that where it's almost like, would you rather have Malik Nabers or Amon-Ra St. Brown? I know for a fact I'd rather have Malik Nabers personally. And then I get to a lot of these other dudes and I'm like, what would be the reason not to put him in the camp of these players? Because again, he's not doing nothing bad and he's doing everything amazing. He's single-handedly moving the passing game at this point.
Oh, I know. He's phenomenal. He is the offensive passing game. He's going to be
the whole pass.
So much of the first read that Brian Daboll, and this is smart on Brian Daboll's part because he is a very talented wide receiver. So much of the first reads go to Malik Nabers. Now, a lot of this is based on what the defensive coverage is. So if the defensive coverage is a certain thing, they also have like very short A-dot routes designed for Wan'Dale Robinson. And we saw second quarter, late in the first quarter, there were a couple plays where Wan'Dale caught the ball and he just like made like 2 guys miss, picked up like an extra 10 yards. Like that's so valuable to your offense and it allows you to stay on script. It allows you to pick up first downs. And then when you have Malik Nabers as that dynamic threat, that's going to open up so many different types of plays for your offense. And we haven't even really seen Malik Nabers deep yet. Like that's a part that we haven't seen. We haven't seen that like 50-yard touchdown. They've tried to connect. Daniel Jones has been inaccurate when it comes to throwing deep. He missed Jalen Hyatt on a pass. He missed Malik Nabers on the last 2 weeks on a couple deep passes. So that's something that Daniel Jones needs to fix. And I don't think Daniel Jones played necessarily poorly in this game, but from an accuracy standpoint, there are definitely things that could be improved. But that's a part of Malik Nabers' game we haven't even seen yet. We've seen like 15-yard passes, 10-yard passes, 8-yard passes that here he's making 25-yard gains, 30-yard gains because of his yards after a catch ability and his ability to make one man miss. Right? And that's so much in football. It's man coverage. It's me against this guy. There might be a safety coming over the top. We'll have to see. I make a catch. And this is the part of Malik Nabers' game that I am so impressed by. He is precocious when it comes to his ability to make a catch and understand where the defender who is covering him, where that guy is, his spatial awareness, his ability to understand the leverage of that defender and then make a move combined with his explosiveness and his agility to make that guy miss and to give himself an advantage to pick up an extra 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 yards is something that I've noticed through the first 3 games. I'm sure a lot of people have, and I've been just wildly impressed by.
I think you nailed it right there because all the physical traits, Nick, we can see, and that's what makes him like the chance to be one of these top receivers, right?
Yeah.
Because they're all off the charts, but it's that IQ, that football IQ that you talked about, the spatial awareness. Like how many times have we seen him catch a little hitch and like understand how to just turn it up for extra yards and maximize the yards after that? We've seen it all season through the first 3 games, except for the first week. The first week, just the offense was just broken. Like that's just is what it is. He still had like 4 for 69, even in a completely broken offense week 1. He still found, what was it, like 4 for 59, 4 for 69. But outside of that, dude, like we're talking about someone who's just doing like literally winning games for the Giants in my mind. Like the last week, they should have won. They should be 2-1 right now. He did everything in his power to make them 2-1. 71% of the passing yards last week, 64% of the completions, 64% of those were after the catch, his yards. Like that's all him at that point. And yet they lost because the defense couldn't, stop could force one punt. They didn't have a kicker. Like these are stupid things, reasons for why they're losing. But like we're getting to the point where 2 of the first 3 games, Nick, one player almost single-handedly won the Giants the game. And it wasn't the position we usually expect, the quarterback. Like it was the wide receiver. And I'm not knocking Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones played well today and he played well last week. Like he got the ball out more on time. He had some misses. That's obvious. I think anyone who with 2 eyes can see that his ball placement was lacking in the second half. There were some throws behind the Malik Nabers drop, if you want to call it that. I don't ever call it that. That ball was it hit him in the back of the right hand. Like that is never a drop. And the Theo Johnson drop, not a drop to me. I know I have a different bar for drop. That ball, Theo Johnson was wide open in the end zone with 6 yards of space in the back. That's one of the easiest throws you can make. If he has to reach and extend and try to like high point it, that's not on the receiver to me. But he made some throws on time, Nick, and he put velocity and ripped some of these balls in, like especially the red zone throws to Nabers. Those were good rips by Daniel Jones. The Wan'Dale Robinson throw that was like a 17-yard gain over the middle of the field. That was a nice rip by Jones. That's timing. That we always talk about the rhythm and the timing of the quarterback, how important timing is in the passing game and ball placement, which is kind of, in my opinion, a product of timing. Well, Daniel Jones has been getting the ball out on time in these last 2 games. Much better than we've seen as of late, and looks more comfortable. But the pockets have also been really good, by the way. I mean, today, obviously, Thomas got beat a few times by Garrett, but outside of that, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, the pockets were great. I mean, the offensive line in general has been playing well, which that was the bar. That was the bar. As long as the offensive line played well, the offense could be functional. They weren't functional against Minnesota, but we're learning right now that Minnesota defense.
Nobody's functional against Minnesota.
Nobody. Yeah, CJ Stroud just got his ass kicked by that team.
So did Purdy.
Brock Purdy in San Francisco. So that's a really good football team, a really good squad. And I didn't even feel like the offensive line was all that bad until Daniel Jones's clock was just gone. And like in the second half, when they could just pin their ears back because the Giants were down and they became really one-dimensional. But yeah, no, I think Jones is keeping the offense on script. At least he did a lot throughout that first half, and he's doing what he has to do to keep the Giants in football games. There were a couple, really, really questionable mistakes. Obviously, the would-be interception where he got hit in the face. I want to see the tape to see if I think it was Theo Johnson he was targeting, if Theo Johnson did something wrong there, or if Theo Johnson wasn't in an optimal position. Either way, that, and there was another play in the second half that we mentioned before where it could have been a really bad mistake if I think Nabers didn't knock that football down. So there's those need to be cleaned up. But all in all, man, I look at Jones and I say we won the football game, and he was what, like 16 of 18 to start, so he was efficient.
The stats are phenomenal for
Yeah.
sure.
It's just,
though, some of that was two screen plays, which again, were designs by Daboll, and then the Malik Nabers ripped interception. That's like 60 of the yards, but still, still great stats. And like I said, he's still getting the ball out on time and doing his job. And I want to say one thing about that. Two things. I want to talk about one thing, the Daboll side of it, but first I want to talk about, as you mentioned this, they're really letting Theo Johnson sink or swim from a snap standpoint. And I can't say he's really been swimming just yet.
No, he's sunk. Yeah, he's sunk
a lot so far.
He can rise to the surface still.
Yes,
there's some buoyancy there. There's some buoyancy there. But like seriously though, like there were a couple plays in week 1 where I think Jones got blamed for it, and I was debating. I'm like, that could be on Theo because he might have thought Theo was supposed to stop. It's this kid. He's a rookie. It's a tight end position. He missed some training camp. We have to be honest about that. He might not be fully up to speed. But when this guy's getting like over 80% of the snap share, and you have other tight ends on the roster who are capable enough to play, in Daniel Bellinger, and Chris Manhertz has been playing a decent amount as well. But yeah, Theo also had the hold as well on that one play. I think it was a designed screen maybe, or it was just like a little check down. He held the guy pretty, but then Daniel Bellinger got called for a hold too. But It seemed like Daniel Bellinger had his hands like on the inside. Yeah. And it's like, eventually you have to let go. Jonathan Vilma saying, it's like, yeah, but like usually when you're a blocker and you're able to earn someone's chest and you're driving and your elbows are tight, they rarely ever call that.
I thought so too. Yeah, I was surprised by it. I know when I looked at the replay, it was like, all right, I guess Bellinger might have helped. Like I can see why the refs threw the flag, but I always thought when you get inside like that, they usually let you drive them to the ground, and that's like a good rep. It's considered like a good rep. I think it's different for every refs, but point being, like, it's interesting. The Giants are letting Theo take over this tight end 1 role completely almost as a rookie, and he hasn't really done well with it. I wonder if we'll start to see more Bellinger mixed in next week against the Cowboys. Like, at what point do the Giants go to that? Maybe that penalty will hurt him in that quest, but I'm curious to see what happens there.
Yeah, so am I. And, I still remain high on Theo Johnson. I just think
long term,
a little bit of a rough start for him, but I'm still,
he was
happy.
Close on that screen, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
That was close to being like a 30-yard gain. It was the blocking was not a little. Not the blocking. I felt like the timing was the blocking was good. They got out. I think it was Illuminor. The timing was a little bit just off on the pass, like for him to transition upfield.
Speaking of, we see the Giants with this upgraded offensive line that we've been discussing. Now we're seeing some screens. We're seeing functionality in that department, which is huge, especially when you're a team that struggles to create explosive plays and a team where a lot of defensive coordinators are designing blitzes against you because they want to rattle your quarterback. If you can make them pay for doing that by hitting a screen to Devin Singletary for 30 yards, or finding a Theo Johnson on a quick screen, or Wan'Dale Robinson, that can really do wonders for your offense and really kind of alleviate that burden and that pressure that defensive coordinators are setting at the Giants.
The Giants hit 3 successful screens in this game, Nick. 3 first downs off a screen, 3 10-plus yard gains on screens. I think we've gone games in my lifetime where it's been 0 in one game. And really, since the Kevin Gilbride era, I don't think the screen game has looked as good as it looked in this game. I know there was a big one to Saquon his rookie year against the Eagles on Thursday night, but that was one play. I mean, or you could randomly call it. It looks like it's now becoming a part of the offense here with Brian Daboll calling the plays. And I love it, man, because that's how you slow down a pass rush, and that's how you make them pay if you can get the timing down. And as they continue to work it in, the timing is getting better and better and better. They were, again, really close on that Theo. I can't wait to rewatch that. I feel like if he just had a little bit more time to make the inside cut, so he could have gotten downhill and gotten vertical a little earlier instead of widening a little bit, flattening it in, he could have been really bursting out there. And I'm excited to watch that. But let's get to this point that I really wanted to get to. I thought, we've talked all off season. We've been talking throughout our entire time doing this, Nick. Does Brian Daboll give you an advantage? 2022, we were like, this dude is giving the Giants a weekly advantage. We love this coach. He won Coach of the Year. First 2 weeks, not maybe so much, though I do think in week 2, he called a really good game against the Washington defense offensively. But obviously the kicking thing was hung over his head, as rightfully so. But this week, dude, the first half play calling was phenomenal. Those screen calls perfectly timed. Getting the ball to Nabers the same way we had been. The red zone designs have been phenomenal. The Giants were not a good red zone offense last year at all. They were one of the worst in the NFL. This year, they've been converting their red zone drives to touchdowns. What do we have today? 3 touchdowns in this game, 3
Yeah.
the week before. That's 6 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks for the Giants offense. That is not normal. That is not common. And that is good design by the coach in addition to execution by the players.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of goes back to 2022. We praised Mike Kafka and Brian Daboll for that when early in the season when they were able to design creative plays off the option and typically using Daniel Jones's legs. And then that really extended into the season. Remember against Minnesota and Indianapolis, the Giants had a couple touchdowns where Daniel Jones like stepped up in the pocket, flowed along the line of scrimmage, and then found like Isaiah Hodgins for a touchdown. Well, now we're seeing touchdowns from the pocket.
Yes.
That's not something we've seen too frequently, right? Like his touchdowns from the pocket. And a lot of them are targeted to Malik Nabers because we see the moves that Malik Nabers is putting on these defensive backs, man. They're sick.
Yeah, and the designs are great to get him open in the red zone too. Like he's been, yes, he's made some crazy moves, and the first touchdown catch, Nick, was a phenomenal individual play, and also Jones, they're getting the ball out there hot. It was a little high, but it was hot, and that's what you want. The velocity made that possibility, and didn't allow the DB to catch up. But 2 of his touchdowns have been like these wide open catches over the middle of the red zone, which I got to give Daboll credit for designing. But I think your point is the perfect one because even in 2022, like before the end of the season that you're talking about, where he was doing those flow touchdowns to Hodgins and whatever, they were just like kind of like tricky designs by Kafka in the red zone, right? With like some play action boots and like getting the ball to the tight ends. These aren't tricky designs. These are a quarterback winning from the pocket because the pocket is there and it's intact and the quarterback's getting the ball out on time, which is crazy. You're right. I haven't seen a Giants passing offense get the ball out on time from within a pocket on this consistent of a basis in so long.
I want to see what coverage the Browns really running on that second Malik Nabers touchdown because he was on Emerson initially, ran a slant, and then he got passed off to a safety. And it's just such a mismatch for that safety to try to guard Malik Nabers in that situation. It was just like a push. I don't know if they were in some sort of match defense, but if you can isolate Nabers in that type of scenario, you're probably going to win 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah, Nabers is phenomenal, man. I just can't believe how good he is right off the bat. And like you said, it's the football IQ that really stands out. It's just giving him that extra boost and extra edge to be a difference maker for the Giants moving forward. I felt like the running game took a little bit of a step back in this game, and maybe that's matchup based. Though I did think, Washington was going to be a difficult matchup too, at least interior run defense wise. I just felt like the Giants were a little bit more one-dimensional on the offensive side of the ball through the passing game today, for what it's worth. And then the second half, I thought that really stood out. That's something I'll be looking to see if they can get back on track this week because this is the matchup for it, right? Like the Cowboys' run defense has been a nightmare level bad.
It's crazy too. They drafted Mozzie Smith in the first round. What was that, 2 years ago? Now they traded for Jordan Phillips to boost up that run defense. No, their run defense is trash, dude. The Giants should be able to run the football at home against this Dallas team, keep CeeDee Lamb on the side. That's who I'm worried about. I hope Drew Phillips could play in this game. And that's not a great thing when I'm like, I really hope that we can have our rookie 3rd round pick to possibly guard CeeDee Lamb when he goes in the slot. Although, I mean, Banks is still the guy. I know Banks struggled against Amari Cooper. But I also believe, and I'll have to watch the film to substantiate this, that the Giants are they're letting Deontay Banks compete in these situations. This is one-on-one against the number 1 read. If we need to allocate coverage to another place, we're going to trust you to do that. And right now, I still trust Deontay Banks to do that because you don't have McLeod. You have Cordell Flott out there a lot. And there were a couple plays where I saw Flott out there and I'm just like shaking my head. I'm like, oh man, it's not great.
He was a little more active from around like making plays on the football, though. I think he had 9 tackles in this game, which is definitely a step up. But I think there's only one recipe for pulling the upset off against the Cowboys and getting to 2-2, and that recipe is duo, like up front running the football like they did in week 2 and keeping the ball out of Dak Prescott's hand for as much of the game as you can. Because I am happy with what happened to the defense, but I'm skeptical that performance is going to be able to translate against a quarterback like Dak Prescott, who can get rid of the football really fast mentally. We'll see. I hope that they can play good defense in that game and have a 2-way game. But I would love it to be like one of those old school Cowboys. You remember the Cowboys offense or the Cowboys team, I should say, in 2016 when they won the division, when the Giants made the playoffs. Their defense was like a year or 2 away. They had totally retooled and rebuilt it. And the entire season, they just kept the ball on offense for like 40 minutes a game, every single game, and won 14 games that way. And that's what I'm hoping the Giants will do against this Cowboys run defense. Just hold the ball, keep the ball, long drives, taking a lot of clock every time.
I'm very interested. Now, I know we're kind of turning the page right now, and we'll only do this for a little bit, in what Shane Bowen is going to do against that offense. Like, how do you stop CeeDee Lamb? How do you want to stop Dak? Are we going to see? We're not going to see 57% pressure. I highly doubt
No.
specific to Deshaun Watson, and it worked well. But I also love the way he was incorporating twists and stunts and these gap exchanges with the linebackers blitzing. We saw double linebacker blitzes as well. So like there were free rushers in at Watson several times throughout this game, and that is credit to Shane Bowen. Against Dak and the protection of the Cowboys, I don't know if that's going to be as feasible.
Yeah, it's the Dak part that scares me most because he's just a really quick thinker and he gets the ball out against blitzes. Like he makes you pay when you blitz him. So teams don't really like to blitz him. But I'll say this, like there's an big opportunity here for Brian Burns or whoever ends up lining up on that side for all the snaps. And it's going to be Burns for most of them because Guyton's not there yet. Tyler Guyton, their left tackle right now. He had a really bad rep today on one of the plays I saw against the Ravens. And I just feel like he's learning the position, and he's a great athlete, but he can be got by a veteran like Burns or even Thibodeau, or if they want to mix it up and throw Ojulari over there. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. There was a rep today where they had Dexter Lawrence lined up on the outside where he typically is in a different gap. I was intrigued by that. There's all sorts of things that Bowen did up front, and I think that's kind of what it like. Think of all the games the Giants have lost over the last 5-10 years, Nick, where they lost the game because their offensive line was so inept that they simply couldn't deal with games up front by the opposing defensive line. I want the Giants to be that defensive line this year, that when you run into a bad O-line, Cowboys won't be that, but when you run into a bad O-line like Cleveland today, you make them pay by just running that shit up front. And I thought it'd be Washington. I thought that would happen there as well.
And it's funny too, man, because now that the Giants actually have real talent on their defensive line, and not just with Dexter Lawrence, but also with the edge rushers, there could be more opportunity to create these free rushers when you bring 5, because the protection is usually slid to one direction, right? And if it's sliding to one direction and you predict it sliding to one direction based on you putting Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence to that side, they're going to half slide or they're going to full slide possibly. You can loop Micah McFadden around the other side and try to create a free rusher that way. And that can also temper the offense from setting the protection a certain way and being very aggressive in that department, right? It kind of removes that chess piece for them if you successfully are able to blitz and they can't find an answer. And Watson wasn't able to find an answer.
Great point. All right, let's get to some questions from the chat, Nick, if we have.
Yeah. So Chase, thank you so much. He says, Daniel Jones has looked very good the past 2 games. Got to give him props. Chase, I would say, I'm not sitting here crapping on Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones has run the offense. I think he's found answers. I think he is dialed into where the answers are. And a lot of them are Malik Nabers, but he's seeing the defense well. I still think he needs to improve with his arm talent overall. I think he's missing throws deep. Accuracy is a little bit of an issue, but I just want him to keep the offense on script and be efficient and not throw interceptions really and turn the football over, which he did in this game. But you know what? It was called back. Fair enough. So that's my take on Daniel Jones. I don't think it was a bad performance. I think it was a good performance, but there are certainly areas that need to improve.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. There were probably 3 turnover worthy plays, I would say. The one that Nabers broke up for the interception, the throwback, the one that Nabers ripped out for a catch that wasn't we can't sit here and say that's a great throw. Like it's got to be outside and in front of the receiver. It can't be hanging in the air for the DB to intercept, just, objectively speaking. And then obviously the interception that got called back, but he also made great plays. The red zone first touchdown to Nabers was a great throw. And I thought the second red zone touchdown, he was open, but at least it was a nice rip over the middle. I thought the Wan'Dale Robinson one that was a 17-yard gain, that was great timing from Jones, great velocity, great ball placement. Those were 3 of his best throws in this game, I thought. But he still had the 3 mistakes as well. And then the deep shots, he missed Hyatt. Ball was nowhere near him. He missed Nabers on a ball you just should never miss, the first one. And then the second one was an okay ball placement, I thought, but a little bit of hanging in the air from the throw. But it wasn't completed. And the deep ball has not been there all year. So I thought he played pretty well and he found solutions and they designed a really good game plan for him.
Matt Peliquin, thank you so much. He says, what's going on with Tay Banks? And then he says, favorite club, Dan? So is he talking about a golf club? Are you that bougie? Is he talking about a golf club, like the tool that you use to hit golf balls? Or is he talking about a sandwich?
He's definitely talking about number 2.
Okay. So you take number 2. You take the shit. Go ahead.
Yeah, go with Banks first.
What's going on with Tay Banks? I think he has a lot on his plate and the Giants are trusting him to be the top corner. And he's this isn't a slight on him, but he's just not yet a top cornerback. He's going to lose to number one wide receivers at times. And I think he's better when he is lined up on the line of scrimmage. I think he's a little bit more further off the line of scrimmage now in Shane Bowen's system. It just is what it is. I'm not worried about Tay Banks. I still think he's a very good football player. He just lost on a few important plays to Amari Cooper. And that's going to happen because Amari Cooper is a talented receiver.
Yeah. And I think I'm with you on that. I think, look, I put behind me, Nick, the idea that he could be like one of the top elite shutdown corners. That's probably not going to happen, but though he still has plenty of time to develop. But I still think he can be a very good corner in the NFL. I think you said it best. They're really they're putting a lot on his plate. Not every corner gets this treatment of you're going to be matched up against the first read, and it's on you to do this. And he's faced good receivers, right? Cooper, Jefferson, McLaurin, he pretty much shut down, if you want to call it that. I just think they didn't throw the ball because they didn't need to. They're just throwing these little quick passes. But yeah, so we'll see what happens there. Favorite club in the bag? It's a great question, Matt. And I think it changes. That's the fun part about golf. It changes from time to time. Sometimes I'm hitting better with others, but the most consistent by far for me is the pitching wedge. I get unbelievable compression out of that, and that ball is straight and compressed every time. Usually, 120 it can go, but I sometimes now have been taking it back halfway for these 105-yard shots and trying to kind of compress it down and get it to go 80 to 100 with a roll. So I've really been liking that club.
All righty. John Branch or John Branchy? Which one do you think it is?
I think it's Branch.
John Branch, thank you so much. He says, to our first dub, thank you guys for your work. We really appreciate that, John, and hopefully the Giants get more dubs. Chase, again, thank you so much. Chase says, the deep throws are a chemistry thing right now. I think those will start being hit soon. I hope, Chase. I hope, because it'd be nice to add that level of explosiveness and verticality to this offense.
Yeah, I'm skeptical of it. I just don't think he's thrown a good deep ball his whole career. I know, again, PFF came out with that stat once that he was great in deep ball accuracy that one season where he had the least, where he had 16 throws down the field. But I think we all have watched the tape for 6 years and we haven't seen an in-stride touchdown, more than a handful of times, 2 handfuls of times. This is not his forte, in my opinion, as a thrower, Daniel Jones. I think you would agree with that, Nick. I think we've talked about this a bunch off pod. Yeah.
Greg Brooks says, and thank you, Greg, the stress of going 0-17 is over. A better quarterback is going to destroy our secondary. Your opinion of Banks improving this season? #Nabers is him. Yeah, so I think Banks will improve as the season goes on, as he gets more comfortable in Shane Bowen's scheme. That doesn't mean he's going to win every one of these matchups. He's going up against the top guys. He's going to go up against AJ Brown and CeeDee Lamb, and he's going to lose some of those matchups, and that's okay. That's going to happen sometimes, as long as it's not these offensive coordinators circling him and saying, hey, we can win this matchup every time. As long as he's winning some of them, then I'm okay with that. It's a first round corner. He might not be a superstar, but as long as he's not a liability and he's a good enough player to be a number one cornerback for you, then I'm cool with that. And if he comes away with some interceptions, that's awesome too.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And to your first question, a better quarterback is going to destroy our secondary. I think it's less so the secondary and just destroy the defensive scheme. I just don't think we're built to beat quarterbacks, in my opinion, we're built to beat teams that either have a lot of struggles on their offensive line or quarterbacks who don't process fast. And that's most of the quarterbacks in the NFL these days, I feel like, Nick, but some aren't. And Dak's a fast processor, and it's going to be a really interesting task against the Cowboys.
But if we can rattle them, so that's where it comes down to Dexter Lawrence and Burns and Thibodeau and whatever Shane Bowen has.
One-on-ones are going to be key against these offensive linemen. And I'll say this, I'm excited to see this defensive line against Jalen Hurts this year. I think they can do a good job against Hurts.
Yes. I'm not excited to see the pieces that the Eagles have when they are fully healthy. I saw Devonta Smith took a huge shot today. I'm not sure if he came back in the game, but that was rough. Chase, thank you again, my man. He says, I want to see DJ's stats against the blitz today. He made them pay most times they tried blitzing. I mean, that is an excellent point. There were times where Daniel Jones, it looked like we've seen Daniel Jones be dead to rights in that situation in the past, and he was able to step up into a clean pocket, maneuver the pocket, keep his eyes downfield, and find a solution. And plays like that are the reasons why I think Daniel Jones deserves some praise, albeit he did miss some throws, because he was able to take what was a negative play in the past and turn it into a positive play, or just not a negative play, like an indifferent type of play.
I agree with that. I thought, the best thing, if you're looking for what did Jones do well today, it was get the ball out more on time, understand the blitzes, understand the coverages, understand where to go with the football. Timing was better. I feel like, honestly, in the past, some of those like short passes, like the 2 screens to Singletary and the screen to Theo, were just not well timed at all in the past when the Giants haven't been able to do it. Like, I don't think it's been all O-line. I think Jones has struggled a little bit to get those short passes timed and the touch on them. They were great today. The 2 to Singletary were really well timed by Jones. I was really impressed by him there. And again, in the red zone, Jones was getting the ball on time, hot with velocity and good ball placement for the most part. So this was a good game from Daniel Jones. Obviously, he had some mistakes in it too, and some off-target throws. The second half was not a great half for Jones, if we're going to be honest. And we'll see what the tape says about that. I think part of the issue was just they went so one-dimensional on offense with the run game shut down.
Peter Pascarelli says, "Screen."
Yeah, we finally did it, Peter. We finally did it. The Giants ran successful screens in this game.
Absolutely love it. And then we have original. It's not coming up right now. There it is. Original something.
Recipe Dan.
Recipe Dan. There it is. Recipe Dan. Wasn't sure how to pronounce that. Thank you, original Recipe Dan. He says, "Go Big Blue." Go Big Blue is right.
Look, we got a season now. That's the fun part. Like the Giants, it was over. If we went to 0-3, that was completely it. Now we go into Dallas. We've been playing underdog again. I'm sure the Giants are going to be like next 6.5-point dogs in this game at best. Probably. Like they might even be 7.5. And they're going to have to do it again. They were 6.5-point dogs against Cleveland today, and they won the game outright. So let's see what they can do.
Chris Perry. Chris, what's going on, man? He says, excellent game. Imagine when we have a real life quarterback. Looking back on the Vikings game, they're better than we thought. Does the whole NFL East look bad? Does the whole NFC East look bad? I mean, the friggin' Philly was able to pull it out, which sucks, man. It's very unfortunate. But yeah, the NFC East, I mean, Cowboys are, their only win right now is against Cleveland. And we kind of see how bad Cleveland is, which makes you really think, how bad is Jacksonville?
Yeah. So bad.
Yeah, Jacksonville is not.
They're not. Looking back, yeah, you're right. The Vikings, how well they're playing makes me feel better about that first loss. I'm angered and annoyed that the Giants faltered a game they easily should have and could have won against Washington. Stupid coaching and stupid defense, in my opinion. And I mean stupid when I say it, because I really think the game plan wasn't great, and I'm standing by it. But the whole NFC is pretty bad. I agree. Like the Eagles, to me, dude, like Jalen Carter's unbelievable. He's taking over games. He took over this game. I saw a breakdown from Sean Syed, who we had on the show to preview the Vikings game. And like it was 4 plays that were some of the best individual plays by a defender I've seen since watching Dexter Lawrence tape. He's gonna be like the guy that's talked about at that next level very soon, getting to that Dexter tier, which sucks because idiotically, the NFL let the Eagles get him at 9 overall when everyone knew he was the best overall player in that draft class. But he had some off-field concerns that simply haven't surfaced yet in the NFL and are clearly haven't meant anything yet. So that's a problem. That's the Eagles. But their offense looks like shit, man. Like Barkley had an insane run touchdown to give them a chance to win the game.
He showed burst on that one,
and he showed crazy burst. That was the longest speed I've seen from him in a long time. It looked great.
Second, third gear, man, type burst.
He's always had. I feel like that he loves playing on that on the Saints Dome turf. Remember the game with Daniel Jones a few years ago where he had the long touchdown reception? Like he's fast on that turf. But Jalen Hurts has not looked good. I know he's had injuries to AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, Nick, but like. He has not looked good out there at all. And he hasn't looked good for a long time. It's not just this year, dude. Last year, Jalen Hurts was basically figured out. And the whole idea was, just get him Kellen Moore and blame everything on the last offensive coordinator, the classic blame it all on the coordinator, and everything's going to be fine. Well, it hasn't been fine yet in the passing game for Jalen Hurts. And I get AJ Brown hurts things, but like he's supposed to be this great quarterback that can process and get through reads and like do things on his own. And that offense was stagnant completely in this game and has been pretty much the whole season. Besides the first game against Green Bay. So last team, Dallas, I think they're a clearly worse team this year. And I think that's obvious. In Washington, the Giants are better than, but they blew that game.
Chris comes back with, also, is Wan'Dale Robinson a top tier slot wide receiver? Thanks, guys. I can't say he's a top tier because when I think of top tier, I'm thinking of like Cooper Kupp. I'm thinking of Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm thinking of players like that. But I think he is a very good and underrated wide receiver and somebody that you want on your football team. So that's how I look at Wan'Dale Robinson. I like him, and he's an ascending player who's still obviously very young and on his rookie contract.
I agree. He gets open, and then once he gets open, he always bursts after the catch and always maximizes space and goes hard into contact. Like, he is a tough physical player for his size. That design on the first play where they had the first conversion, like a 3rd and short, Nick, I love that design by Daboll to get Wan'Dale Robinson open behind in the backfield and then create that little lane for him to burst upfield, get vertical, and create that first down. It was just a little added nugget that I like from Daboll today.
Ken Chiafredi. Ken, thank you so much. Says Nabers, a beast. D-line was great. Aziz, reborn. Yes, Aziz Ojolari looked very good. I'm excited to go over that on the All 22 for sure. And that is our last super, Dan. So do we have anything else we want to go over before we dive into the All 22, which we should have them both done by tomorrow, I believe, right, Dan? Yes.
Yeah, the plan is to do them both tomorrow again, like last week.
Yeah.
Probably in that same time range, yeah.
Which I'm looking forward to, man, because there's a lot to get into with this game plan on both sides.
Always better to watch when they're actually winning these games. Yeah. And there's such exciting defense in this game from the Giants, such exciting offense at times in the first half, at least. And I'll be excited to see a couple things, like what you said. Like, one, how many of these plays the Giants made in the first half in the passing game were Jones finding a solution and getting through his read and getting to the point where he can get the ball out. And then two, how much in the first half was the defense just absolutely dominating up front. And there's a lot of things I'll want to see when we get to the date, obviously. And I'm excited for it. So it'll be a good time. And then short turnaround, man, because Giants play again on Thursday night in a game that could ultimately change and redefine their season. We were all kind of out on this team after 0-2, especially losing as disgustingly as they lost to Washington in a way that we knew they could have avoided. But get to 2-2 with an upset over Dallas. The whole outlook of the season essentially changes at that point, and that's on the table for them. They just have to play. And I love that this win, dude, is going to bring the locker room a little more together, because there were some weird things going on this week with the Jalen Hyatt situation. And obviously they tried to dial up a deep shot for him early that they missed on. But outside of that, he didn't really get much. But this is what brings it back together. Dexter Lawrence, I feel good for him, man. He's put his blood, sweat, and tears into this team. He's a leader of this team. And I could see him on the sidelines in the game. He was so happy to not go 0-3 and not have another loss and like deal with this losing BS every single week, every single game, and like every year of his career with the exception of one. So like, give him a chance, give these guys a chance to win. Hopefully they can get it back on track. What are your thoughts?
Couldn't agree more, man. I mean, it's an attainable task for the Giants. I mean, the Cowboys, they kind of own the Giants recently, but the Giants are going to come in there with a chip on their shoulder. Dallas is very, very desperate. So let's hope they can actually put them to the test and get a dub.
Dallas has owned the Giants, but Dallas owned the Giants before the Giants had Malik Nabers, who was targeted 12 times today on 34 routes, 8 receptions for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. 56.9% of the Giants' team air yards went through Malik Nabers. He's the only receiver in the NFL to account for over 50% of his team's air yards this season. Just astounding stats. He's the first receiver in NFL history, or I'm sorry, third receiver in NFL history to record 5 catches over 70 yards and over 70 yards in consecutive games, started his career, putting him in the likes of like Andre Johnson, Nick, and people like that. I mean, this dude is single-handedly changing the entire offense for the Giants. And we said this might happen. We said, could he make this offense quarterback-proof? And so far, he has done a great job of that.
He's also had 2 carries and a pass attempt.
Good point. Also, the carry was on 4th down. Like, that was a huge play in this game. Right.
That was a hilarious play, too, because the safety on Malik Nabers' side understood what was going on and rushed down to the line of scrimmage. But the contained defender towards the run, it took him a second to notice what was going on. So that safety threw the contained defender at Malik Nabers, and you saw him just like try to go for his legs. It's just like, oh, man, that was great, man. Hey, he's an explosive athlete. You want to get him on the edge. You want to use him. It worked.
Yep. All right. Thanks to everybody tuning into Big Blue Banter podcast. Film reviews coming, preview coming. Giants quick turnaround. We'll have reviews of that Cowboys game as well coming. So big week for the Giants. Got back on track. Made it fun again. Have a good rest of your night, and we'll talk to you soon.